The Democrats in this state for the last 10 years have absolutely decimated public education. We just found out in the Newport Mesa Unified School District that they were socially transitioning like 30 children without parents' approval or knowledge. They have taken away the rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their kids. They've introduced curriculum, especially in sex ed, which is introducing the concept of children becoming more sexually active. They want to change your kids' gender at a very young age where they cannot consent and they don't know what's going to happen. It's not the same Newport Mesa Unified School District that I grew up in. No.
My name is Scott Piotr. We're here with Costa Mesa Brief, and today we're going to be talking about the Orange County Board of Education. Our guest today has been a board member for 28 years, and I'm going to have him tell you a little bit about himself. Please welcome Dr. Ken Williams. Dr. Williams.
Scotty, thank you for allowing me to share my life and a little bit about the County Board of Education and education, because it's so important to parents. So a little bit about me. I'm a native of Orange County, born and raised here. Went to Estancia High School, went to UC Irvine, went to medical school out in Pomona. Raised my family here, and I was voted by the constituents here in Orange County in 1996 upon the board for a 4-year term. And I've been here for 6 terms later, so about 28 years.
Well, how does a medical doctor get involved with education?
Right, so I'm passionate about education. I'm actually an instructor. Excuse me, I'm actually an instructor and involved in teaching medical students and residents. So this was a natural for me. I had kids back in '96 who were being a part of what I saw as a up-and-coming storm in education, and I care very passionately about the well-being of our children.
So teaching is kind of maybe one of your gifts and one of your strong suits and what you are advocate about as far as maybe in medical as a doctor.
Yeah, I have an associate clinical professor position at my alma mater, and teaching medical students, and as well as other physicians too. There's a lot that I'm doing now that I get the opportunity to teach, and I enjoy it.
Great. Well, Orange County Board of Education. Most people don't know that it even exists. So tell us a little bit about what the Orange County Board of Education does.
Right. So there's like 58 county boards of education in California. Each county has their own county board, and each county has a different role for the county board. So in Orange County here, we have our own schools. We have the administrative part that is responsible for cutting every single paycheck for every teacher and employee.
By the Board of Education.
And the Board of Education and the other 28 school boards here in Orange County. So it has a big role administratively. But we have our own kids, and the big thing is that we are a real big pro-charter board, and so we've been approving a lot of these family-friendly, conservative-oriented school charter schools. And
so now that's a big deal, right? Because if the parents want to start a charter school in their area, they have to go to the local district for permission, which is like never granted, and then they can appeal it to your board, right?
That's absolutely correct. So a lot of the charter schools that get denied at the local level, they're allowed through the state constitution to appeal at the county level. And because we're so pro-charter and we believe in the right of parents to direct the upbringing of their kids and have some type of educational choice, they come to us, and if it's a good charter, most of the time we will approve them.
And by good charter, you mean they have all the pieces and the parts, they have the administrative side, they know how they're going to put a curriculum together and things like that.
It's not easy to start a charter school. It's a lot of work that goes behind it. It takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of dedication and perseverance to get one up and going. You have to have facilities, you have to have the administrative side, you have to have legal side. You get a little bit of money from the state to get started. It's not an easy effort though. It takes a lot of dedication and perseverance.
And the charter schools get state money then, so the money follows the student. So if you have your son in a public school and then you move him over to the charter school, the money follows your son. So it is school choice in a limited amount.
A charter school is a public entity. It is a public school, and the money does follow the kid. And these charter schools begin in TK and go all the way through high school. So it's a marvelous opportunity for parents to be involved because these charter schools are more sensitive to parents, and they the parents have an actual critical role in the administration of the school. Unlike your bread and butter, corner brick and mortar school that is run by the CTA or union activists, where they don't want parents to be involved. Charter schools want and require parents to be involved in their children's education.
So parental involvement then is a key, let's say an ingredient to the success of a charter school, and part of what you guys are really advocating for then.
Absolutely. When I went to school in the 60s and 70s in Newport Mesa Unified School District, they wanted parents to be involved. It was a very different time and period, a very different purpose for education. All of that is gone now. Now the public schools don't want parents involved. We see a lot of, across this nation, parents getting very upset with what's being taught in school. The lack of clear mission, a lot of mission drift actually. The primary purpose of education is amiss. No longer is it about inculcating facts and knowledge and critical thinking skills. It's all about political agendas. It's about wokeness. It's about indoctrination. And that's the problem with public schools these days, is that they're under the control of Sacramento. We have to have a real serious conversation here. The Democrats in this state for the last 10 years have absolutely decimated public education, Scott. They have taken away the rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their kids. They've introduced curriculum, especially in sex ed, which is introducing the concept of children becoming more sexually active. It's taking away from their innocence. We look at the transgender movement that's happening now. In 2007, there was one transgender clinic in America. You know how many there are now? 300. It's a social contagion.
So did all of a sudden it just explode and there was this unmet need, or is it manufactured?
I think there's a lot of politics that are playing a role. We look at like critical race theory. That's something we were talking about earlier. That is a academic theory, one of many academic theories that comes from the university setting, but it has moved its way down into the K-12 curriculum. And that's where I'm taking a strong stand against this, because this is nothing more than racism. It's the exact opposite of Martin Luther King. When I grew up, he was my hero. He said it's more important about the content of the character of the individual rather than the color of their skin. And unfortunately, this critical race theory has infiltrated parts of Marxism within it.
Okay,
we're getting too far involved.
So critical race theory. So first of all, COVID, if you could say that there's a benefit, one of the benefits was a lot of the parents got to see what was being taught to their kids, because they were looking over their shoulder as they were looking on the computer in their Zoom classroom from home, and they got to see what was going on, and a lot of parents didn't like it. Now, of course, we like the idea of parents getting more involved and taking more responsibility of raising their kids, but one of the things that came out with that, which was exemplified in Virginia back in 2021 during their governor's race, was critical race theory. Okay, so now we've heard of that buzzword. People sit there and say, we're not teaching critical race theory, and it's really going under another name. Can you give us a succinct definition? What is critical race theory?
Well, critical race theory, again, is based upon a legal interpretation of race and how it involves us in our society. Critical race theory is introduced in the K-12 curriculum by teaching that the color of your skin is more important than the content of the character. That if you come from a background with a certain color skin, you have certain advantages and privileges that you have to be aware of, and you have to lay at the feet of society and give in to this cultural phenomenon of wokeness.
So forget the fact that 1 million people died during the Civil War trying to free slaves. They're basically saying it doesn't matter that slaves were freed 150 years ago. What matters is you're white, this guy's black, this guy's Latino, and they're disadvantaged and you're advantaged just because of your birth.
The birth, the color of your skin, and even we see it if you're someone who has a Latino background or you're an African American background, and you come and talk about that what you are doing and saying in critical race theory is essential for our kids. If you disagree with them, you're canceled out of society. You're attacked. Even if you're Latino or black, you are accused of being a racist or segregationist.
That depends on your viewpoint now. Now you're talking about political perspectives. So
that's all about politics now, isn't it?
It's okay to be black or Latino if you hold a certain perspective. But if you don't, if you hold the other perspective, and they will use the words the white perspective, then you're not Latino anymore, or you're not black anymore. So critical race theory, let's boil it down, is what?
Critical race theory is the exact opposite of what America has been building upon since the civil rights era of the 60s, which it's not important about your color of your skin, but more important about the content of your character and excelling based upon your character and your work ethic and victories in life, getting a good grades, achieving college road and pathway, achieving your medical degree, achieving your PhD.
Some people have likened critical race theory to Marxism, whereas Marxism will sit there and separate you by class. You're the, rich bourgeois, you're the slave, you're the worker bee, whatever. But in effect, critical race theory is using race to divide us rather than the old melting pot of uniting us.
Absolutely. They're using the color of someone's skin to cause disunity, confusion, and a complex society. It's not about bringing people together. It's not about charity, love, and grace, and openness, and being frank and honest with one another. It's all about division. And that's the essence of what Marxist society does. It divides people. It confuses people. It gets people to hate one another.
Oh yeah, the whole concept of a melting pot was, hey, we all shared the American ideology. We shared a common goal, a common love for country. The whole concept of being able to pick yourself up by your own bootstraps and have somebody like Joe Biden go from a worker bee, as he likes to refer to himself as Lunchbox Joe, to the President of the United States.
Right.
Where else in the whole world could that happen? It can't. You can't be the leader of the country starting out at the bottom of the ladder. Right. And then critical race theory is basically saying, no, you're stuck at the bottom of the ladder. It's not your fault. It's this guy's fault.
Right.
And they keep dividing us to keep us from doing anything about it.
Absolutely.
Now, so if I go to a school board and I say, hey, you're teaching critical race theory, stop it, what do they say?
Well, a school board that is controlled by the CTA will say, parents, you don't have a right to dictate what's being taught in the classroom. If you come to a school board that has a parental-oriented approach, meaning they put parents first and they listen to the parents, they're going to say, we're going to look at the CFCRT
So
being taught, we're going to ban it.
In Orange County, you might have 26 controlled by the teachers and 2 controlled by the parents.
Right. Yeah. So right now we have 3 good school districts that have banned CRT in their schools. The rest haven't said anything.
They just keep doing it.
They just keep doing it.
Whatever the name is that they go by. Rather than teaching reading, writing, and arithmetic, teaching critical thinking, they're teaching how to hate each other.
These are subjective political indoctrination into kids' hearts and minds and soul. It's not about inculcating facts and knowledge and teaching about the basic reading skills and basic mathematical skills. In fact, if you teach that, there are people in academia who say that's racist, teaching how to use the English language to write a nice formal letter. That is racist to some people. It's absolutely incredible where we're at academically in America.
It's almost gotten as bad. I hear I'll say the old joke, I don't know if it is that old, but 2 + 2 is what?
Should be 4.
But it kind of depends. Well, if you're the disadvantaged kid over here, it may not be 4 for you. It may be some other number.
And that's exactly what they are doing. In fact, what they're doing in some of these schools, like in some of the Ivy League schools, they are no longer requiring any of the assessment testing, like the SAT. I know in the medical school that I went to, the MCAT scores in your GPA are not important. It's the color of your skin. Now that's sad. It's like you're going to have a neurosurgeon who is based upon entrance into medical school because of his color of his skin. That's bad. It should be upon the merits, upon how hard he worked, upon his GPA, his testing scores.
His skill level.
His skill level. So meritocracy has gone out the wayside. It's all about the color of the skin. And it's unfortunate.
So what is or can the Orange County Board of Education do about it?
So the Orange County Board of Education has no authority in the education code to tell a school district what to do, just like the county supervisors can't tell a city council what to do. We have our own schools and our own kids that we educate. We educate a lot of the adjudicated kids in the criminal system. We have a homeschooling program, which is a good homeschooling program, which I encourage because parents really run their kids' education. We of course have the charter schools that we approve of, and then we have a foster kid program too. So those are the children under the authority of the county
So the Board of Education has limited authority over these kind of outlier type schools that are not part of another school district. Otherwise, basically the parents need to go to their local school district and find out what's being taught and elect school board members that will listen to parents rather than the unions.
Exactly. It's going to be a igniting of parents getting involved in their kids' education. And you mentioned the COVID crisis and the fact that they got involved in their kids' education. We're seeing a lot of mama bears and papa bears come out who are really upset about what's happening in education these days. And it's going to be up to the individual, maybe the next door neighbor who says, I care about my grandkids and my community. I want them to have a good education. We're losing it in public education. We're losing it to the left, who has these progressive, woke ideas of diversity, inclusivity, and equity, and these are very, very harmful to education.
You know, if it wasn't so evil, it's genius. They basically corrupted the colleges that then corrupted the teachers that are trained by those colleges, who then go into all the schools and corrupt our kids. And we just kind of think, oh, it's like when we went to school. And you're basically saying it's not.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other issue that we touched on a little bit already is the whole trans movement. The whole, I'm born a boy, but I really think I'm a girl. And it's always been around, but for some odd reason now it's on the top of everybody's, plate.
Right.
And in schools, if a little girl or a little boy, even as young as kindergarten, sits there and says, gee, I don't know, am I a boy or a girl? The schools are actually coming out and saying, well, we don't know either. What do you feel like? Let me help you decide. They're, rather than saying, you were born a boy, you're biologically a boy, you're a boy. Instead, they're actually saying, no, you can be a girl if you want. What's going on?
Yeah. So gender dysphoria is a real issue. It is a real diagnosis. A lot of these kids who feel trapped in a body that's not identified as their biological or birth sex, they do have issues. They have more and higher rates of suicide, depression, anxiety, and they're often associated with foster kids. So this is a very real issue, and those kids really need a lot of mental help. Most importantly,
is there often abuse in those ingredients as well?
Abuse in
sexual abuse, that they've been abused as part of their dysphoria?
There could be, I suppose, in every society,
it's not
at every level.
necessarily, it's just part of it.
It could be a part of it. I mean, sexual abuse happens across all age ranges, and it doesn't matter your gender.
So going back to your dysphoria, then what happens?
Yeah, so that's a very real problem that our kids suffer with. Back in the earlier years, we would just allow these kids just to grow up, and most of the time and they're mostly boys, they would either become gay or they become transsexuals. They dress up because they feel better dressing up as women. But today what we're seeing is nothing that's based upon medical science. It's all based upon political ideology.
So I'm just going to stop you for a quick second. So somebody who's identified, let's use the example of a male who thinks he's a woman trapped in the male body. You say he ends up becoming gay or becoming...
He'll dress up like a woman later on if he grows up. Right.
But don't a lot of them, as they go through puberty, get over it and they lose their dysphoria and they go on to function as normal heterosexuals?
That's exactly what the data in the medical literature is. But today what we're seeing, as I mentioned earlier, there was one clinic in 2007, now there's 300 of these gender clinics. So what they do is they stop these kids' maturations sexually with Lupron, these what we call puberty blocking agents, and then they transition them to actual testosterone later on. So that's kind of this process where they're affirming. It's called gender affirming therapy. rather than just allowing these kids to grow up and get the medical, psychological, mental health care, they're trying to transition them. And a lot of these kids later regret it. In fact, when we look at Europe and we look at some of these major European countries, they don't do this anymore. They're a couple decades ahead. They stopped doing gender-affirming care and puberty blockers. They just give a lot of care and
Gender-affirming
attention.
care is such a misnomer. Basically, they're saying, you can change genders and we're going to help you.
Yeah, and which
And you're saying in Europe they did that? They've been doing that for 20 years?
They've been doing that for 20, 30 years, and now it's stopped. There's a big lawsuit where it was shown that these kids who were transitioned, both from a medical as well as a surgical perspective, they were transitioned, and they always started, or they still continue to have the psychological problems, the depression, the anxiety, the suicide rate. So there was no improvement with the medical or surgical transition.
Just that
so that's why they stopped it.
An honest evaluation of, hey, the fix isn't curing anything, let's stop.
Exactly. The medical or surgical transition, the treatment that they want to give to try and cure gender dysphoria was never validated by medical data or science. And unfortunately, we have this politically correct environment in the United States here, in Western civilization, where they want to change a kid's gender at a very young age, where they cannot consent and they don't know what's going to happen. If you left those kids alone, they're going to grow up and be what they're going to be anyway. And so why permanently change somebody with whether it's a hormone blocker or surgery? And that's the problem that we have. There's no evidence to support this type of care. It's politically charged, and it's bad medicine. And there's going to be lawsuits. And
so
that's
Europe
when things will
is
change.
largely stopped.
Europe has largely stopped gender transition.
But
yes.
it's just beginning here.
It's just beginning here.
I've heard stories of school and school districts that, little Johnny comes to the teacher and says, I think I might be a girl, and they'll actually take Johnny out of the classroom and get puberty blockers prescribed for him or any of the above things, including as drastic as surgery, to surgically alter them.
There was a bill that was signed
without telling the parents, by the way.
Absolutely, and the roots or origin of that is from a bill, AB 1266, signed by then Governor Brown, that gave the rights of these parents, it gave the right to the kids not to have their parents involved in these very serious conversations and diagnoses.
At 13, they're
and
going to
care.
be making that kind of a decision?
Yeah. In fact, we just found out in the Newport Mesa Unified School District through some Public Record Act emails that they were socially transitioning like 30 children without parents' approval or knowledge.
When you say socially transitioning, allowing them to dress according to their gender identity rather than physical?
Right. So we don't know if there's been any medical transition yet. This is a part of an ongoing, evolving process. But parents were taken away and removed from the process of knowing when their kids were reaching out to teachers, asking for help, and the parents were not told about this.
In fact, teachers specifically say, don't tell your parents.
That's it. If you look at all the data, if you look at all these emails that are now public documents, teachers and counselors in Newport Mesa Unified School District were transitioning kids socially.
So little Johnny comes to school dressed like he normally does, and the first thing is the teacher lets him go into the bathroom, change into a dress or something as a girl. And then he goes throughout the whole day that way, and then he changes back before he goes home to mom and dad?
Yeah, actually these emails show that like in the yearbook, they'll change the child's name, but officially they kept it what was legal because they didn't want the parents knowing. But the pronouns were changed for these kids who identified that I don't want to be this gender. The parents were not told. They were transitioned. They were sent to counselors and psychologists. We're not quite there as far as did they actually get medication or surgery. We're not there, but the fact that parents are not engaged and they're not told is an anathema to the rights of parents.
Not even not engaged, they're actually deceived.
They're deceived.
On purpose.
Yeah. It's an anathema to what we think as the rights of parents and the rights of society and natural law. That is the rights of parents to direct the upbringing of their kids.
Man, I've heard people Jordan Peterson has been famous for it already in saying that, hey, anybody that gives puberty blockers, which is in effect chemical castration, either to boy or girl, and makes them sterile, and or surgery, ought to be life in prison or worse.
I love Jordan Peterson. These puberty blockers are not without complications or side effects. They cannot always be reversed. And so once you go down that line medically and pharmacologically, you have these kids now that transition, they stop puberty, they now get transitioned to a sex hormone such as testosterone. And now they begin to develop the lower voice, the masculine features.
This would be in the case of a biological girl wanting to be a
That's right, and it's the exact opposite for the young boys who want to become girls. They go on puberty blockers, and then they get put eventually on medication to increase the estrogen.
So what's happening in Newport Mesa? Are the parents coming unglued? Is the school board addressing this? Did the school board know anything about this?
So this happened originally in 2019 at the Newport Mesa Unified School District. They have a policy. They call it the Alliance of Education, which is a pro-parental rights group, did a PRA request to find out what's going on. And what they found is really quite remarkable. These kids were being transitioned. No one knew about it. There was a policy that was passed in 2019 that no one knew about. And the policy...
Passed, you mean by
the school board.
By the board?
By the board, absolutely.
So the board knew about it?
Well...
Or was it buried in some approval that the state or that their superintendent didn't tell them about?
Again, so AB 1266 was the bill that allowed this to happen, and it was done in secret. No parents knew about it. And I've talked to a lot of parents in that school district, and they had no idea these type of things were happening.
Man, I gotta tell you, if they did that to one of my kids, I would be down on their doorstep yanking him out of that class right away.
So there is some litigation that is just getting started because of this, and it's going to be a big issue. I mean, we didn't think that this would happen in Orange County.
Who would have thought?
In Newport
Anywhere
Mesa
in the
Unified
United
School
States.
District.
What are you talking about?
Well,
Newport Beach and Costa Mesa, really?
Yeah.
Started there? Or at least it was found out there. Maybe it's going on in other districts and we just don't know about it.
It's not the same Newport Mesa Unified School District that I grew up in. It's not the same era. Times have changed. People have changed. Philosophies have changed.
So you're talking to parents. What would you advise them to do on these kinds of things?
Number one, if you're not involved in your kid's life, you better get involved, because your kid's not going to be turning out the way you want them to, because schools and public education, they have an agenda.
So does that just mean, what, volunteer to be the room mom so you know what's going on? I mean, it's kind of hard to do that in middle school or high school.
So I tell parents, you better look at every single paper that comes home with your son or daughter. Look at it, go be involved in their homework, help them with their homework, ask them how their day was.
So are there websites out there that have this kind of information that can tell us what to look for?
I don't know any websites other than the Education Alliance that hopefully you can show
it's on the screen right here.
Yeah, okay, good. So that is a good place to start, and everything is well documented there. There are a lot of pro-family conservative groups in the state of California that want to get back to the basics in education. Again, that inculcation of facts and knowledge rather than politics or indoctrination of social philosophy.
A charter school site so that parents can go out and start a charter school in their neighborhood?
We have a lot of good charter schools that this school board has approved, and they're all getting back to the basics and empowering parents to be the providers.
Are they at max capacity, or is there room on some of them? I mean,
most of these charter schools, Scotty,
waiting lists?
The waiting list, absolutely.
Then they need more charter schools?
We need more charter schools.
Okay, so we have another thing on the bottom of the screen, how to start a charter school. Okay, what else?
Yeah, so parents need to be involved in their kids' education. They need to talk with their kids. They need to quit being selfish and being selfless and get involved and be involved in their kids' life.
You mean the parents need to be more...
The parents need to be involved in their kids rather than self-focused.
Yeah, which we all fall into, face it, we're human.
We are all human.
And we have so many things on our plate.
We have way too many things on our plate.
What else, what more important thing could there be except our kids' education?
There's nothing more important than our children.
Sad to say that the left figured that out a lot sooner, and they have done a good job of stealing and changing the form of our kids.
Yeah, it grieves me so much to see this agenda that has been evolving over my 28 years here in this board. We saw it with something called Common Core.
Right.
Over a decade ago, they started to make this nationwide, and then it began with a called California Healthy Youth Act, which Planned Parenthood was deeply involved in introducing topics and subjects that are not age and content appropriate, down to the kindergarten age, introducing children who should not be introduced to the sexualization. I have 13 grandchildren, and I care about their future. I care about the future of this country. I want those values that made this country great. The simple things like family, faith, and freedom, liberty, the ability to talk without being constrained or being counseled. We see so much of this restraint of speech. There's no such thing as free speech anymore. These are central to what made America great, and we're losing all these values, and we cannot. We need to stand up. We need to be the point of the spear. We need to be in the frontline battle, foxhole, and that's where we're going to win these battles. We cannot sit back and just watch things happen.
Thank you very much, Ken Williams.
My pleasure.
I appreciate it.
Okay.
That's it for Costa Mesa Brief. I'm Scott Piotr. Back to you.